Hello everyone, Storm 101 here. Today we'll be having an early look into hurricane season of 2022 and also an early look into the summer of 2022 as well for the United States. Before we get started this video, if you guys like weather related content, you can subscribe to my channel. We do stuff here all the time on this channel. Plus, we'll probably have one more update on this, my official forecast. I do plan on to get it released towards the end of May, so definitely stay tuned for a forecast of as well. This is not really a forecast video. We're just having an early look into hurricane season, what the models are suggesting, and what it's kind of looking like at this point. So, we're going to begin with sea surface temperature anomalies, and definitely a couple of areas to watch for, and one of the bigger ones is the Enzo, which we are still in a La Nina pattern. And typically with La Ninas, with hurricane season, does lean towards an active hurricane season, mainly for the Atlantic. Now, the Eastern Pacific, not so much when it comes to uh, La Nina conditions, but for the Atlantic, it's usually pretty active. Which, whenever we do look in the Atlantic, like in the main development region, which is right here in that red box, we're kind of lacking a little bit. There are some pockets of slightly below average sea surface temperatures, which kind of leads to some uncertainty early on. And that could indicate for the possibility for a slower start to the hurricane season. So maybe the summer months anyway, it may not be very active or anything like that. It might be closer to average. It might be a slower start. But keep in mind, we're talking about this in late April, so there's still plenty of time for the main development region to warm up, and it can change a lot from now till then. But for right now, the main development region is looking to be running either at average or slightly below average. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean, it's pretty much running at closer to average, and then in the Gulf of Mexico, it's actually slightly above normal. But let's look at the changes in the sea surface temperatures over the past 7 days. And the main development region is generally warming up. However, parts of the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, it's slowly cooling down, so it's backing off a little bit. So there is some uncertainty, at least at this point here, with the sea surface temperatures of how it could impact hurricane season early on, which what I mean by early on, in the summer months, which hurricane season can also go deeper into the fall months as well, but the fall months is pretty far away at this point. But let's check out the Enzo in a little bit more detail here. So this is the CPC outlook here or at least the probabilities for the Enzo, and they are favoring La Nina conditions throughout the summer months, which I've highlighted in the box right here. Pretty much I got about a 50 to 60% probability, so it's not a very high probability. The neutral state, though, is about a 40% probability, but you can also see here El Nino is pretty much not expected here during the summer months. So it's either going to be in the La Nina stage or in the neutral stage. If we see neutral conditions here, that might actually help kind of slow down the process as you kind of get into early on with hurricane season during the summer months. So at least it's not as bad as it would be during a La Nina type of phase as well. If we look into some other things, if we kind of scroll up a little bit, check out kind of subsurface temperature anomalies. And you can see here from the latest here, you notice here from April from April 18th, a lot of cooling going on underneath the surface here. However, if you kind of get closer to Neo 3.4, there's a lot of warming going on out there as well. So there's some uncertainty when it kind of comes to the Enzo of how it goes here. But I do think in La Nina conditions will likely at least last through May, but it could certainly continue into perhaps into June as well. And really beyond June, there's going to be quite a bit of uncertainty here because if it does continue to warm up, we might be able to get into the neutral side of things as well, and that can help bring down the probabilities for at least an active early season for the tropics. Let's check out some models here. We're going to begin with the CFS model. This is June, July, and August, and you can see here not a very active picture here overall. There's a lot of below average anomalies in the main development region, but in the Caribbean, in the Gulf of Mexico, it's a little bit closer to average as well. So really, the CFS, when it comes to precipitation anomalies here, doesn't really show a very active look, at least for the first half of hurricane season. Now, if we were to go a little bit deeper into in the fall here, September, October, November, it does have a more active look out there as well. The Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico doesn't look to be very active, but if you kind of go north, the Lesser Antilles, Puerto Rico, or Cuba, or around the Bahamas, you do see there's a lot of above normal anomalies out there, which does indicate for the possibility for some above normal tropical activity, at least in those areas. Now, good chance it could change here. I mean, we're still pretty far away. You're talking about several months out from September, so this could change here. But if the CFS is correct, at least in the fall here, which you also notice here in the eastern U.S., it's generally below average. Hopefully that's the case here. We might able, if the CFS is correct, we might not see much way of landfalls um, out there as well for hurricane season, but I cannot promise that. But then again, that's still pretty far out. Here's a Kansas model when it comes to precipitation anomalies here. And you can see a pretty similar situation to the CFS model. Doesn't look to be very active at all for the first half of hurricane season. But whenever you do get into the fall, a little bit more activity out there. Not as active as the CFS here, but it does have its pockets there of some above normal anomalies, especially coming out Africa in the eastern part of the main development region. There's even some activity possible in parts of the Caribbean, and that could lead into parts of the Gulf of Mexico. So definitely some different stories here. But what they both do have in common, though, is that the eastern U.S. is generally slightly below average for precipitation, which kind of means there's an indication there might be some troughing going on in the eastern U.S. during the fall, which may help veer a lot of these storms here back out to sea. Hopefully trends do lean this way here because, especially with a La Nina type of pattern, an active hurricane season seems likely, especially with a Enzo being in the La Nina stage. An active hurricane season will seem likely, but we definitely have to pay attention to see how the upper level pattern kind of goes in the eastern U.S. because if we see a lot of troughing in the eastern U.S., we might not see much way of landfalling hurricanes here in the U.S. But then again, I can't really promise that. We're still pretty far away here from the second half of hurricane season. But for right now, I will say that at least for the first half of hurricane season, it looks like it could be a slow start. Perhaps, especially with sea surface temperatures, kind of on the side below average to average side of things. But when we get closer to fall, that's when things will really pick up as well. But then again, there's still plenty of time for changes here. But overall, it does seem like for hurricane season, we're kind of leaning towards the above normal side of things at this point. Although that could change as well. Let's kind of look a little bit into the summer side of things here in the United States here. Let's check out the 500 millibar geopotential height anomalies. And you can see here, as we look into June here, ridge of high pressure here indicated by the CFS model over parts of Texas and New Mexico. Pretty far to the south here. There's another thing I want to note is that it does suggest some troughing in the western U.S., which could indicate for possibility for some severe weather setups over parts of the upper Midwest, the high plains, even the parts of the northern plains. So if the CFS model were to be correct, severe weather might be a little bit more active up a little bit up north out there as well. It also does suggest there might be maybe some troughing in the eastern U.S. As well, which is kind of hard to tell on this map here. But wherever I kind of look to some of these lines here, there could be some troughing over Greenland as well, which is a possibility, which could lead to some above normal temperatures in the eastern U.S., which I mean, that's a possibility. But one clear indication, though, is that it does show some troughing in the western U.S., which might be a negative P&A in place, which back in the sea surface temperature anomalies, we still have that negative PDO in place, which can still help kind of control the pattern a little bit as well, especially with La Nina conditions kind of coming in here um, in the summer months, or at least in June anyway. If the La Nina is still around, could be another active period. Even for severe weather, could still be active as well during the month of June as well. And if we look at the Kansas model, pretty much a little bit of a different story here. It's a little bit cooler around Greenland, kind of around the North Pole there, but it also still suggests troughing in the western U.S. as well. So there's some similarities out there. It's got some ridging in the central U.S., even a little bit troughing in the eastern U.S. as well. So if the Kansas model were to be correct, we need to watch the northern plains, high plains, upper Midwest for the possibility for another active pattern for some severe weather out there as well. Which, if we go back to the CFS model and check out precipitation anomalies for the month of June, here you go, where it does suggest above normal precipitation anomalies is where we could potentially see some active severe weather. So it's got the northern plains, upper Midwest, even into the Great Lakes as well. So these will be areas definitely to watch for um, as well. You also do notice in the Gulf of Mexico, there are some above normal anomalies in the Gulf of Mexico as well, which could be an indication you might be able to see the possibility for some tropical weather to get involved as well. So that's another thing to watch for as well. Otherwise, uh, in parts of the Central Summer Plains, it's looking a little bit drier. But you also notice here at the desert southwest, it's closer to average. That's an indication the monsoon season might be coming into play at that point as well. Um, if you check out the Kansas model, when it comes to precipitation anomalies, pretty much a completely different story here. Generally, everybody's drier, which I highly doubt everybody is going to be dry here. But I think part of the reason is that it does suggest a troughing in the eastern U.S. And if you get troughing in the eastern U.S., especially in the northeast, it generally brings in a lot of dry conditions, especially in the eastern and central U.S. But I do think there could still be some activity in the western U.S., which what's interesting is it also has the desert southwest closer average for precipitation as well. If we go back to the CFS model and go back to 500 millibar height anomalies and go to July, this is when that ridge really becomes pretty amplified here. Now you got a strong ridge in the four corner states, possibly still some troughing in the kind of along the west coast, but there's also possibility for some troughing in the northeast as well, which could lead to slightly cooler conditions as well. A lot of this is on a northwest flow as well, which could lead to the possibility for some derechos. At the same time, during the summer months, derecho season is also around as well. Really, the area to watch for derechos this time of year is generally in the Midwest. Even as far north as the Northern Plains could potentially see derechos as well. Which, if you do not know what a derecho is, it's basically a cluster of thunderstorms that can go on for hundreds of miles. It can also create widespread wind damage um, as well. So that's what derechos are. And usually, typically during the summer months, we do see derechos out there as well. So it's definitely another thing to watch for as well as you kind of get into the summer months. If we check out the Kansas model when it comes to July, you know what? It shows something pretty similar. Similar to the CFS model, it's got a big ridge in around the four corner states that's going to lead to a lot of drier and warmer conditions for parts of the western U.S. You also got that northwest flow at the same time as well. You're also going to see a lot of springtime thunderstorms out there as well for parts of the eastern U.S., which could lead to average to slightly above normal precipitation anomalies, which usually when it comes to the long range models here, they do not really hint the springtime thunderstorms that well, so it would not surprise me if it's a little bit closer to average than below average, in my opinion, if we are going to see a pattern like that. So that's something I should note as well, which I do disagree with below average anomalies for parts of East US. I think it's going to be closer to average and possibly slightly above normal as well, which also suggests some above normal precipitation anomalies in the four corner states. Hopefully that's correct because some folks could really use some rain right now. So that'd be a good sign if they could at least get an active monsoon season. You know what? I'm sure they will not mind that at all. They could certainly use some rain out there. Going back to the Cfs model, checking out precipitation anomalies, I do agree with this a little bit more than the Kansas model, but it also still suggests a lot of drier than normal conditions out there as well. It's bad to have drier than normal conditions in the summer because that's where you get some of your worst droughts. Some of your worst droughts could typically be in the summer months as well, especially here in the eastern U.S. So it's not a good thing to see having below average precipitation anomalies, especially if you're a farmer as well. It's not good for the crops out there as well. Hot and dry weather, that's something you will want in the fall for harvest, not in the summertime. So that's another thing to watch for is that could we see another big drought? That's another thing to keep an eye on. So, but then again, like I said here earlier, the long range model does not handle precipitation anomalies very well in the summer months. So that's something I should note there as well. Let's check out August here. Going back to 500 millibar high anomalies, so troughing really becomes more amplified in the eastern U.S. And this can help with hurricane season. If you do not want any landfalling tropical systems, troughing in the eastern U.S. is going to be your friend. That's going to help steer a lot of these tropical systems out back towards the sea. So hopefully trends go this way here. Just hopefully that could occur. But then again, it's still 4 months out, so it could still change out there as well. But I also still got that ridge going on in the Four Corner States, which is very typical out there as well. It's also going to lead to very mild conditions in the northwest as well, which you can see those above normal height anomalies across the northwest as well, which could lead to some very warm temperatures up there. And if we check out the Kansas model, looking into August, you know what? It's a little bit more aggressive with the ridge here. It kind of covers pretty much most of the southern U.S., and that derecho season could really continue over parts of the northern plains through the Great Lakes, even in the northeast as well, and maybe in the parts of the Ohio Valley as well, depending on the strength of that high as well. If we do check out precipitation anomalies here, honestly, I would figure that for most areas, it'll be kind of dry here in these areas right here if your ridge is going to be like this. But it also kind of brings in moisture for the desert southwest as well, which you can see here from the Kansas model. It's actually closer to average out there as well. So that can lead to a pretty decent monsoon season out there too. Checking out the CFS model, going back to precipitation anomalies, you know what? It shows a lot of dry air out there, and that's kind of the bad side of having a trough in the eastern U.S. It keeps a lot of us on the drier side of things, but it does keep things a little bit on the wetter side in the western U.S., which they will definitely going to need to use some of that rain as well. So hopefully that could kind of be the case here. But at the same time, here in the eastern U.S., hopefully we do not see a major drought there. That's kind of a downside of having a big trough in the eastern U.S. is that, especially for areas a little bit farther off to the west, you could see a big drought out of it as well. Which you can also see there in the northeast is also above normal for precipitation out there as well. The last thing we're going to check out is the CFS, or not the CFS, the climate predictor outlook here for June, July, and August, which this is seasonal temperatures. And no surprise here, pretty much everybody's above normal, but you kind of get that idea where it tries to show some troughing in the parts of the eastern U.S. That's where you kind of see some of those lower percentages of where they are. That might be an indication for the possibility for some troughing. Really, the only area in the United States that's got equal chances is the West Coast out there as well. But they do agree on that there's going to be a big ridge over the Four Corner States, which I do agree with as well. If there's an area I'll watch for duration season, it'll probably be up here in this particular area. And then you look into the precipitation anomaly, still decently questionable here. I do agree the fact that the central U.S. be unfortunately be drier than normal, but they got three different areas of above normal precipitation. They got one over parts of the mid-Atlantic, which can be indication for active springtime thunderstorms out there, possibly for some MCS storms or derechos out there as well. It's typical to see that this time of year. They got another area of slightly above normal precipitation for parts of the Gulf Coast. Could be an indication for some tropical activity. And they also got another area above normal precipitation for parts of the Four Corner states. That could be an indication for monsoon season as well. So overall, um, which this outlook here will likely change here. If models trend towards more tropical in the eastern U.S., it would not surprise me if they kind of back off some of those percentages for above normal in the eastern U.S. a little bit, and they could make things a little bit drier out there as well. But overall, it's not a bad forecast. But then again, there's still plenty of time for a change as well, which we'll talk more about summer and hurricane season in late May. But anyways, guys, that's all for guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Guys, like this video, hit that like button if you like my channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you guys have questions about this, put a comment section down below. Answer guys' questions. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and have a good day.